Ready, set, hut.
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Dotson, here with my fellow nerds, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
Garrett Price.
How's it going?
And Jared Wackerly producing and on the mic.
What up?
That was me sliding in an extra by the way.
Back after a long weekend at the FF Expo in Canton, Ohio. We got to hang with tons of analysts, tons of fans. Really good time. I'm exhausted. But we're still here talking.
We are here.
Doing exactly what we're doing all weekend. Talking fantasy football. Our final division breakdowns. NFC North today on this show and AFC North on the Nerd Herd show. Pretty exciting.
Always exciting. Although, originally we decided to do the North last, so that way we had clarity on the Deshaun Watson situation. We still don't have clarity.
Nope.
No. Guess what? He's not playing.
I don't think he is.
Most of your fantasy season, if at all. Yeah. So
we'll get to that, though.
Easy come, easy go. That's probably not the right term to use.
Terrible.
But hey. Not my first terrible thing to say. And that was totally unintentional.
That was totally. I could tell by the look of surprise on your face when it came out of your own mouth that was not intentional.
You gave the look that we normally get.
Yeah.
Before we get into this topic here at the NFC North, I got to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks, guys, gals, friends. Prize Picks, and what is it? It's a prop bet site. Right, it's going to give you it's the number one prop bet site out there. And to me, I am way more getting into props than anything else. Like even more so the lines, they're just more fun, right? Like these over-unders on rushing yards, on receiving yards. Like, Matt, you gave, what was it, Jamar Chase one? Did you have that?
Jamar Chase over under 1,250 yards.
Yeah, smash the over.
Easy.
Smash that over. Look, you could literally.
What about Justin Jefferson? 1,350.
Smash the over.
I'd take the over too.
Yeah,
okay.
Dude, two bets right there. You can win. You're going to win 10 times your entry.
Done and done.
Cooper Kupp, 113 receptions.
Definitely seems like the over there.
Over.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, obviously.
And this is all you have to do. You pick 2 to 5 entries, the over-under. That's all you got to do. And when you do that, you can win up to 10 times your entry. And it's not like you're playing like a million people here for a prize. You just have to win your bets. It's you versus Prize Picks.
I got a good one. Jonathan Taylor. 1,450 rushing yards.
Well, I'd be skipping that.
That's a tough one.
That's a perfect line. That's right where I would probably put it.
I would take the under.
I might just for like injuries.
Yeah.
You have to for injuries.
This one's for me and you. 925 Javonte Williams.
Over.
Smash it.
Yeah, I'd smash that over too, actually.
Yeah, you would.
He's gonna run for 1,000.
You would smash that over.
Yeah. This is easy money. Get the Prize Picks ASAP.
We just made like $1 million.
Yeah. Like once I get to so I go to New York a lot for like stuff, and I could use stuff.
You made that sound way more shady than you needed to.
Yes, for real.
Yeah, for stuff. Don't worry about it. Don't tell the FBI or the CIA. And that's where I can make that's where I get my Prize Picks action is. Like I already have a couple in, and like, dude, now that these like more future lines coming in, I'm gonna be smashing it.
Dude, Ezekiel Elliott, 875 yards.
Oh my gosh.
That's
okay. All of those I was saying was a smash. That is the easiest by far.
That's just a layup. I mean,
yeah. That's like,
give me the space.
I'd put the line at like 1,250.
Right.
That's like 6 good weeks.
They obviously didn't see him working out on the beach.
They did not.
Good. He looked explosive.
Dude.
Wow.
Right now, get the Prize Picks.
Or 875.
Yeah.
Use
that promo code NERDS. Put in some money. They're going to match your deposit up to $100. On top of that, throughout the whole summer, we've been, because it's hard to get these NFL props out there in the summer, a little less action. But, we've been offering free Nerd Herd shirt. Ooh, excuse me. Wow.
Wow.
I'm so excited. There you go. Myself. Free Nerd Herd shirts at if you sign up for Prize Picks. All you got to do, we have a little sheet at the bottom, Jared. Google sheet?
Yeah, there's a form in the show notes. You just click on that. You fill it out. Put your address, your shirt size, what color you want. If you watch the YouTube channel, Matt's got on a purple shirt for the Vikings. Rich has the Bills. And the Lions, Garrett?
I think this is technically the Cowboys /Colts /Lions.
And I'm wearing
the Lions.
Chargers.
Sweeter looking.
Yeah.
They were wearing Chargers. So, yeah, get on there, put your shirt. We'll send you a shirt. Now, we're only doing this shirt promo until the season starts. Ooh. That's it. So, actually the week before the season starts. So you only have like couple more
3
weeks to get that in there to get a free nerd shirt and have some fun all season because it's not just NFL too. It's MLB, NBA, college football, any sport. They're going to have a prop bet on it. They have so much more going on there as well. They have some redraft games going on right now. No, that's not. No, they don't have redraft games going on. Right now.
No, they don't. It's all right.
A lot of prop bets.
Mixing the promotions. We're good.
All right. So should we get into?
Oh, we should.
Promo code Nerds. Prize Picks. Check them out. Big fan. Chicago Bears.
The Bears.
They play in Illinois. They're named after an animal from the Wizard of Oz. Their quarterback is Justin Fields, Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman. Running back David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert. Is it Tristan Ebner? Ebner.
Yep.
Darrington Evans. Wide receiver, Equanimous St. Brown, Darnell Mooney, Byron Pringle, Velas Jones, N'Keal Harry, Daz Newsome, Tajay Sharp, Dante Pettis, David Moore. I had to name them all because you don't know which ones are going to stick.
You never know.
Tight end Cole Kmet / wide receiver 2. Ryan Griffin, James O'Shaughnessy. They gave Matt Nagy the boot. He sucked.
Hasta luego. Yeah.
Here to go. So they bring in Matt Eberflus. He's the offensive, and they brought in.
God bless you.
He was defensive coordinator for the Colts, right? And their offensive coordinator is going to be Luke Getsy. He's been the passing games coordinator for the Packers for the last couple of years.
Yes.
So 2019 to 2021.
He was a GA when I was at Akron for the quarterbacks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Is he a smart dude?
Yeah, he is.
There we
He's
go.
a good dude.
So they bring in Trevor Siemian on a 2-year deal. They gave him $3 million guaranteed, so he'll be the backup there to back up Justin Fields. They signed Nathan Peterman. They gave him $1 million, but he'll be the third string.
He is basically a third stringer. Yep, just kind of holding on at every stop.
Yeah, Darrington Evans is not guaranteed a spot. Byron Pringle, he's guaranteed because they signed him to $4.1 million, and they guaranteed him 3.9 of it. So he almost got a full guaranteed deal. Where Tajay Sharp, he's got a $1 million deal. Equanimous got a 1-year deal that doesn't include any guaranteed money whatsoever. David Moore, no guaranteed money. Dante Pettis, no guaranteed money. So right now it's pretty much Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. And you got to love that as a Cole Kmet fan, right?
Oh, I'm so excited about that as a Cole Kmet fan. We've talked about Cole Kmet a ton, and mostly because I love him so much. But just the fact that he had literally no touchdowns last season. His targets, he had the 8th most targets. The 7 guys ahead of him were 1 through 7 in scoring points last year for fantasy football teams. So all signs are pointing to him having this breakout year. And that might not necessarily mean he's tight end 3 on the year, but I think we're going to clearly see him be one of these top 10 guys. And I think he's going to be closer to 5 than 10. Or at least he has the upside to be able to do something like that. But we'll see through these first few weeks, his relationship with Justin Fields. Has this offense gotten better overall? The only other weapon outside of that would maybe be Velas Jones, the rookie that they drafted.
He intrigues me the most. I mean, he's polished. He's the oldest draft pick, 25 years old.
Super old.
Real fast. We were on a 4.32 at the combine, I think, if I recall right. So he's
twitchy too. Yeah.
Yes.
He's very twitchy.
The problem the Bears are going to run into, well, one of many that the Bears will run into, 31st ranked projected offensive line by PFF this year. So Justin Fields didn't have a lot of time last year. It's not getting any better this year.
He didn't have a lot of weapons last year.
Didn't have a lot of weapons.
Well, they were dead last in receivers last year in open wide receiver, like receivers getting open at all.
And they lost Allen Robinson.
Yeah, so
but they replaced him with Pringle.
There we go.
So
once you pop, the fun don't stop.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't just eat one. No, that's late.
So when you start there at the offensive line, you start with Justin Fields, who's a dynasty darling, definitely in Superflex, and there's a lot to be excited with because this is a guy who, when he started the year, it was pretty rough, right? But the end of the year last year, from like week on, he had a couple good starts. I mean, outside of Davis Mills, he gave you the most QB1 games. He had 4 of them. Week 8 he was QB3, week 9 he was QB9, QB8 for week 14, and then QB10 week 15. So he had a good stretch there of getting it done. So the fact that he's going to be willing to run the ball a little bit more, which is what he did the second half of the season. The first half, he was only rushing like 4 times a game, but the second half of the season, when his points started to get an uptick there, he was literally doubling that over those last couple of games. He was running a little bit over 8 times a game. So Justin Fields, coming in with Darnell Mooney. Still doesn't have a lot of options. It's why I like Cole. Velus Jones is a nice little sleeper there.
Right.
Because the reason I look at Darnell Mooney even as a player that was successful in fantasy, let's call him that, at least last year, he was just heavily targeted. He was the only one actually doing anything on that field outside of Cole Kmet. So we have a situation here where Cole Kmet could be the number one receiving option. And outside of that, their number one receiving option is slightly above average in Darnell Mooney.
I think
solid player.
I think Mooney's a solid
benefited.
player, but his best position is probably a number 2 wide receiver on a team, not a number 1. So they don't really have that bona fide number 1 guy. Velus Jones isn't that guy either. He's a slot type player, a gadget type player, a guy that you can get the ball too close to the line of scrimmage and you can make things happen, make people miss in the open field. So I do feel like, this team as a whole, they're kind of one of these teams that I'm avoiding for a lot of the reasons that Garrett said that they've got one of the worst offensive lines, or they're projected to. Justin Fields is still going to be going through some growing pains now. This is his second quarterback or second head coach in 2 different years, so he's in a different system. That never bodes well for young quarterbacks. And I feel like by the time they're getting it together, they have a lot of money coming off the books, or a lot of people on expiring contracts as well. Byron Pringle, David Montgomery, Ryan Griffin, like a lot of these older guys, N'Keal Harry, who cares about him? But a lot of their guys that they have signed right now are guys that are on short-term contracts. Even Darnell Mooney, 2023 is his last year if he doesn't get extended. So there could just be a lot more turnover, especially since it's a whole new regime coming in this year, that a lot of these contracts might expire and they might just be churning in a whole bunch of new people as well. So this is just kind of Chicago as a whole is kind of one of these teams that I'm just kind of avoiding this year.
So there's 2 shares I'd want on. 100% on my dynasty rosters, and that's super flex. I'll take Justin Fields everywhere, and Cole Kmet. I'll take him everywhere too. I love tight ends that are going to have an opportunity to be the number 1 option on their team, and at worst case, number 2.
And I don't mind those guys long term. I just, for this year, I don't want anything to do with them. I'm not going out there trying to trade for them or anything like that, because I think there might be a dip in their value after come this year.
The only position we haven't really touched on is the running back position so far, and it's been one that's been under a little bit of controversy. I don't know if controversy is the right word, but it's been an interesting backfield. Right. David Montgomery's been kind of the steady Eddie running back throughout his career, and now we're hearing rumors of him taking some snaps potentially on special teams. Khalil Herbert played well last year, and supposedly people, the staff likes him, but they also like Tristan Ebner, who played well in the preseason game and has shown some flashes. Is David Montgomery still that safe, steady running back that he once was, or no?
And not in my opinion. This is a bad sign, right? When you hear a guy that's been traditionally a starting running back and a guy that they could rely on for 3 downs is now having to play special teams for the first time ever, not like the first time like ever in the NFL, like ever, like he didn't do it in college or anything like that. Like that shoots up red flags for me. Could they just be sending a message? Maybe he's not having the greatest practices, and they're like, if you're not going to play well in these practices, you're going to go do special teams. Yes, and we might not ever hear anything of it. But,
sure.
I think the writing still is on the wall for a guy in Montgomery who is good, not great, coming up at the end of his contract. That, hey, we can just replace this guy. He's nothing.
Especially
special.
with this class coming in.
Absolutely.
We're talking about one of the best running back classes we've seen in a long time. And staffs really like to get their guy.
Yep.
So this could easily just be one of those situations where Montgomery could be on a different team next year. Could that be good? Sure, maybe. But most of the time when running backs are not on the team that drafted them, it's usually they're in some sort of committee on some other team. And so chances are we've seen the highest peak as far as value goes
100%.
for David Montgomery.
He kind of falls into what I was saying about Mooney too. He's been totally he's benefited completely off just the amount of touches he gets, right? Like running backs like David Montgomery, we see all the year. If you can stay healthy and get all the carries, you're going to produce fantasy football numbers. And he's done well. He over 1,000 yards, 24 touchdowns. When Cohen went down, Tariq Cohen, who's no longer with the team, he stepped into that pass receiving role. But you mentioned Khalil Herbert, another solid running back. Do I believe Khalil Herbert's the running back of the future in Chicago? No. I believe it's always going to be a young guy they're going to draft. Like you said, it's a strong class next year. And there's no reason to extend David Montgomery. To be fair, there's no reason to extend any running backs that aren't exceptional unless you're going to take below market value as well. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with David Montgomery. I'm with you. I think the new coaching staff will want to get their own guy. I think put him on special teams clearly states he's not their guy.
Right.
Which would make David Montgomery a very interesting player to watch this year as the season starts. He might want to be a player that if you can get a 23 first for, if he does start off as, the early down plotter, the guy that's going to get all those tough yards there, and if he's even remotely involved in a passing game with no definitive pass catcher running back, his numbers will be a little bit inflated early on. So that'd be probably the best time to move David Montgomery, because I don't want any of these running backs that really hit free agency, right? Like it's too much of a gamble for me. And like Garrett said, with this running back class being so strong in 2023, is that what you really want to put your dynasty future at the running back position on? Like one of these free agent running backs? When they go out there and get a guy in the second, third round that could easily outproduce them?
That'd be way cheaper against the cap.
Yeah, interesting player to keep your eye on there. I'd be interested in also keep my eye on Mooney. If Mooney has value right now, my sale sign would be open on him. Again, for me, it's just Cole Kmet and Justin Fields. So those are my dynasty asset cornerstones, I would call them. Besides that, everybody else has got a for sale sign out front.
And I'm not relying on either one of them this year. I know you have a higher outlook, Garrett, for Kmet, and I do think he'll do better than he did last year. I don't know that he's going to be in the difference making category.
He probably won't. And I mean, unless you're a top 3, 4, 5 guy, you're probably not making a big difference.
I think Fields will be in super flex leagues. He'll be a startable week in, week out asset. Definitely maintains that 8 rushes per game stat right there. I mean, if you get a quarterback that rushes 8 times a game, you're borderline week in, week out.
Yeah, and he had 400 yards rushing last year, and it's not like he didn't start. How many games did he start last year? 11 or 12 or something like that. It wasn't like the whole year.
Yeah, because they had Andy Dalton in first.
Week 3. They pushed him to week 3. So in week 3, when he wasn't rushing the football, when he was under 4 attempts per game, you're talking about quarterback 34, 31, 30, 19, 24. It wasn't until week 8 where
he started picking it up a bit.
Well, and then he was inactive for weeks 12 and 13 and 16 through 18.
I remember he missed some time in the middle and late.
But it was an interesting note, and I wish I could remember who tweeted it. If you tweeted this and you're listening right now, feel free to tag me and say give me credit next time, because I can't remember. But someone highlighted, and I went and looked. The week that Justin Fields had his best performance was week 9 against Pittsburgh Steelers. You guys remember that primetime game, Monday night game? Led them on an awesome comeback. Still came up short, but he led them on an awesome comeback. Threw for almost 300 yards, was dropping dimes everywhere. That game, Matt Nagy had COVID. Matt Nagy was out for that game, and that was his best game of his season.
Shocking. Huh?
He's QB3 week 8.
Yep. Crushing it.
Yeah, interesting to see that come along here. But bye Justin Fields, bye Cole Kmet, everybody else. Well, thanks for coming.
Well, see ya.
That goodwill's for a reason.
Flush it.
Let's move on, shall we?
Yep, we shall.
The Detroit Lions, another back. Well, you know what? There's some interesting players here to discuss. QB, Jared Goff, Tim Boyle, David Blau. Running back, Deandre Swift, Jamal Williams, Craig Reynolds. Wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, DJ Chark, Quintus Cephas, Josh Reynolds, Trinity Benson, Tom Kennedy. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson, Brock Wright, and James Mitchell. They signed Kadero Hodge. Well, no, he left. He went to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm sorry. They signed DJ Chark to a 1-year, $10 million contract with the Lions. That is fully guaranteed. You think he's playing?
He's in there.
Yeah, he's in there.
Grit.
They signed the tight end. They didn't give him much money there. So,
Coach Campbell, did you guys watch Hard Knocks?
No, I did it. No, I thought you just said Tourette's or something, man. Grit.
Oh, yeah.
You're made of grit.
It's pretty good.
All I've seen so far is Aiden Hutchinson's rendition of Billie Jean. That's all I've seen so far.
I watch.
Watch it. Hard Knocks was great.
I never missed.
I will.
Hard Knocks.
I just got to get. I wait for a week or 2 in, and then I get my free month of HBO with another email. It's a yearly process. It's exciting.
So before we get to DJ Chark,
for me, I got it.
Yeah, I got it for a month on a fake email.
And the receivers. Well, I mean, let's just start up right up front with a guy like Jared Goff, who from a fantasy perspective, wasn't glorious, but he held his own for what he had back there. Again, a guy who did not have a lot of receivers.
And when he did, they got hurt.
When he did, they got hurt. I mean, it was literally Josh Reynolds for most of the year until the end where Amon-Ra St. Brown really stepped up.
What's up, guys?
Finished the year as wide receiver 2 over that long stretch there. But Jared Goff's got arguably a top 3 offensive line for the Detroit Lions. He has a really strong run game. They boost that receiving core pretty drastically by, bringing a guy like DJ Shark that can stretch the field. They have a really good, route runner, sure-handed guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown. Josh Reynolds is a solid number 3. And then obviously when Jameson Williams comes back, he'll be their number 1 receiver. Whenever he's actually healthy enough to get on the field at some point, whether it be November, October, somewhere around there. So Jared Goff as a dynasty asset, what do you think?
He's that not fun to draft quarterback 3 that you're going to inevitably use like 4 times a year. And he's going to get you exactly like league average points. And it's never going to be exciting, but I think he's more valuable than people are giving him credit for.
I think so too.
Because right now you're banking on, like, he's going in the same type of range as a lot of these young flyer guys that are, maybe they'll keep the job, maybe they won't. Right now, Jared Goff is fairly secure. Now, could they be terrible this year and they go and draft somebody? Yes, that could happen to any quarterback not inside that upper echelon elite tier. I mean, I think 2 years ago, Baker looked untouchable. And then after this year, he was gone. He had just got off beating the Steelers and then almost beating the Chiefs in the playoffs, and now he's on a different team. So any quarterback that is not in that elite tier of Mahomes, Herbert, Brady, those guys, all their jobs are not secure if their team ends up in the top 5. So he's just as vulnerable for that as anybody else, but he's performed well. He's been a good leader for the team, and he's actually got his weapons healthy, and they only added to that. So yes, I'm not excited for him necessarily, but would I be shocked if he ends up being quarterback 18 on the year, 17 on the year? I think it's a possibility.
I think there's a path there. I mean, you're talking about a quarterback last year that suffered by his wide receiver core. Like, his average depth of target was like second from last. I think Ben Roethlisberger was the only one who was worse than him last year. So he had nobody to really throw the football to. And on top of that, he had that COVID issue last year. Mm-hmm. He also had another injury, like a little after middle of the road.
I don't remember
as well. I can't remember what that was as well. So he had COVID to deal with and that injury. But a surprising stat what I saw when I dug into Jared Goff a little bit is he did have 4 QB1 weeks.
Yeah.
So he gave you that. You know what I mean? A third of the season, he gave you QB1 numbers, which I was kind of taken aback with how he was able to do that. Now, obviously, Amon-Ra Brown put up some good numbers there as well. But I think, like Garrett mentioned, they bolstered his weaponry, right? Like, his armory is looking a lot more dangerous than before. Having a healthy Deandre Swift, who will dominate more in the passing game, more likely than he will between the tackles,
right,
will bolster his numbers.
That was going to be my point. Yep.
So I think Jared Goff he's so, in these super flex leagues, like, quarterbacks are so hard to come by. He's still young enough. He's still affordable enough. I mean,
very affordable.
You could probably get Jared Goff for a 2nd-round pick.
He's 27 right now. He'll be 28
in October. Yeah.
He's very cheap. And you got to know what you're going to get. I mean, it's not you're not going to want to start him every week, but he is like a safety blanket for somebody on a contending team to get you through some bye weeks or something like that. I think that's how I view Jared Goff anyway. Like, if I know my team's trash, I don't want him on my team. But if I'm going for something and he's going to be my 3rd quarterback or something like that, I feel pretty good about that.
Right. And you mentioned it really quick, Richley, but the Detroit Lions offensive line, PFF has them ranked as the 3rd best offensive line coming into the season. So that is a quarterback's best friend. And if you want to increase that average depth of target, that's a way to do it, to have more time behind the line of scrimmage, be able to do some of those things.
And then get wide receivers like DJ Chark and Jameson Williams.
And Jameson Williams that can get downfield. Absolutely. On top of that, it was surprising. Detroit, for as good as they weren't last year, actually ran a fair amount of plays. They were 19th in the NFL in plays run. Assuming that the offense actually has more time on the field, longer drives, we could actually see them as maybe one of the more efficient offenses as far as total number of plays run per game. And we all know that the more time you're on the field, the more plays you run, the more opportunity for fantasy points. So last year they averaged right around 62 plays a game, where the top tier teams averaged around 67, 68, 69 in that range.
I'd be interested to see a split, though, between when Dan Campbell took over and before that. You know what I mean? Like, see exactly what it was when Dan Campbell was running the offense, because I know that happened and they looked a lot better afterwards.
And to give you an idea, too, when you say things like this, where I'd buy Jared Goff for a second. I'm like, oh, he's not a very good quarterback. In Superflex leagues, you have to be understanding that even the bad quarterbacks are high-scoring players. Jared Goff last year was the 71st overall highest-scoring player in 14 games that he played last year. Scoring more points than, obviously he was hurt, but George Kittle, more than David Montgomery, more than Melvin Gordon, more than Tua. Henry got hurt, more than Devontae Smith, more than Zach Ertz, more than A.J. Brown, right? Mm-hmm. So 71st overall fantasy score. So when you acquire some of that for so cheap to slide in your Superflex league, even if he's a bad quarterback, he's still scoring better than average player out there.
Absolutely, still a starting quarterback, a young starting quarterback as well. So
and you get that kind of value there.
Yeah, I looked in the GM trade browser tool, and there were some trades for a second straight up. Majority is about a second plus.
Second plus,
like 2 seconds,
which I would still be willing to pay if I don't have to pay a first and I can get a starting quarterback that is semi safe as far as job security. Yeah. I'm doing that all day.
I'd pay 2 seconds for Jared Goff. I wouldn't want to pay 2 seconds. I'd love to pay a second and 2 seconds, or a second and a third.
Sure,
but I'd have no problem paying that for a quarterback. I mean, it doesn't get much. I mean, you're paying the same price for Matt Ryan.
Right.
Pretty much, and that guy's 37 or 40,
Yeah, his peak might be a little higher, but he's only going to have 2, maybe 3 years.
Yeah. The odds of Jared Goff, if Jared Goff does good enough again this year, he may get another short-term contract from Detroit. It's a possibility. Let's jump into the number one player on this team, though, shall we?
Let's do it.
DeAndre Swift.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Russell Brown.
I thought he was going to say DJ Chark. No, I'm just kidding.
When you get a guy like DeAndre Swift, where's the value come from?
Passing game, yeah.
Pass catching. Yep. And that's what he does extremely well. There's only when it came to actually catching footballs per game last year, there's only 2 players that caught more per game basis than DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift averaged 4.8 per game last year.
Eckler?
Nope.
It was definitely Swift.
CMC on a per game basis?
Or it was definitely Harris,
I mean.
Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette.
Najee didn't have more per game?
No.
I am shooketh.
No. This is what Pro Football This is what Pro Football Focus is telling me right here.
Liars.
Christian McCaffrey caught 5.3, Fournette 4.9, and Swift 4.8.
Well, there we go.
That was last season. So right now, coming in, good offensive line, a quarterback that literally threw the ball shorter than anybody in the NFL last year outside of Ben Roethlisberger. I think Swift's in a pretty good place to dominate this year in the passing game. Well, he'll probably have about 70 receptions this year.
Dynasty-wise, where do you have him ranked among running backs?
Probably today, right around like 4th, probably somewhere right around there.
That's where I had him in my brain, but he might be a notch higher or a notch lower.
I think he's deadlocked in that top 5.
Rich has him at RB4.
Okay. Yep. And that sounds about right. There's, he's in it's Jonathan Taylor.
2.
See, a notch or 2 higher.
Look at that.
Garrett's at 3.
I'm at 3.
You guys are all right around each other.
So
do I have Najee ahead of him?
You have Garrett's got Javonte at 2.
Of course I do.
You got Najee at 2. You got Jonathan Taylor, Najee, CMC, Swift, and then Breece Hall.
All right, that makes sense for me. I like those.
Yeah, and it's basically a big tier. It's Jonathan Taylor, and then it's a tier of like 5 or 6 guys.
True.
And that's fair. Obviously his biggest deterrent is going to be Jamal Williams there, who's going to be in between the tackles runner. Who Jamal Williams?
He's like the funniest, nicest,
wait till you watch
coolest
Hard Knocks,
guy.
Dude.
I did see that other clip of him, like
that's pretty sweet.
in the huddle. Yeah, like all of his interviews and stuff too. He's maybe the most entertaining guy in the NFL.
So I mean, he's gonna be the more ground and pound. He's gonna cause, he's gonna be the more yards after contact guy. But Swift is gonna be the starter. It's probably gonna be about. Well, I have the stats where they actually played last year together. So they played 10 games together healthy. And when it came to actual snaps, Swift played 66%, Jamal Williams 35%. But when it came to actual rush attempts, Swift had 103, Jamal Williams 102.
I was going to say, I think it's one of those situations, if you watch the games, it's going to frustrate you how much.
Just check the box score.
Yeah, how much Jamal's actually getting, the rock. And if you just kind of, sit there and check the box scores, you're going to be fine with the outcome.
But it was 3-1 on targets. Yeah. Swift had 62, Jamal 22. And even the goal line carries, it was pretty close. Jamal Williams got 5, DeAndre Swift got 4. Mm-hmm. So this will be the Deandre Swift show. I will say that. But Jamal Williams holds some value.
There's this like undertone of them wanting to keep Deandre Swift fresh though as well.
Sure.
That you constantly kind of low drumbeat from the coaching staff. That always makes me a little bit nervous. But like you said, his passing game chops is really where he's going to make his hay, especially in fantasy. So 18
points per game.
Right. I think everyone should just be, rest assured, as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a really high output type of guy.
There's a reason we see these guys, the guys that do it well, right? The guys that excel at what we're talking about, Deandre Swift doing it. These guys are at the top of Dynasty fantasy football rankings and most of all, fantasy football production year in, year out. We're talking guys like Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara has been the gold standard in fantasy football for the last 8 years. So enter Deandre Swift. Those guys are worth their weight in gold. And I appreciate more so that they are involved. They get most of the production in the passing game because it equals less opportunity to get hurt. So for me, I do like Deandre Swift in that tier there. And so does everybody. I just bought him for 2 firsts. And a little bit extra on top of that. And I feel really good about it because I have a running back here who could potentially be a top 5 finisher for me for the next 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and move on to your guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I do love Amon-Ra. There was a time this offseason where I had to unlove Amon-Ra for a little bit. And
hype got out of control.
The hype got a little crazy, but it came back down to earth. And what he was able to do was fantastic. I mean, he was on pace with Cooper Kupp, who had an all-world season last year. Granted, it was for a short time period, and the main concerns are legitimate. He was the only show in town. They're
very legitimate concerns.
It is a very legitimate concern. However, the talent and the ability is still there. The things that I saw as a prospect, his ability to be able to get open, good route running, strong at the catch point, all those things are still true. The thing is, it all comes down to what are your expectations for a guy like Amon-Ra? Do you expect him to be a wide receiver 1 or a high-end wide receiver 2? Well, then you're probably going to be disappointed. I don't think we're ever going to see the production that he had at the end of the season last year. But could he, for a bulk of his career, especially if he's still attached to Jared Goff, who likes to keep things short underneath, which is where he plays for the most part, could he be a extremely serviceable low-end wide receiver 2 to high-end wide receiver 3? Absolutely. And I think that's where he's going to live as wide receiver 20 to 30 for basically his entire career.
And I like what you said there because that's exactly what I was thinking. If you look at him as a wide receiver 3, you're going to be happy. If you look at him as a wide receiver 2, you might be a little underwhelmed at times. You know what I mean? And so I think if you have him in your lineup and he's your third guy, good. If you have him in your lineup as a flex, you're
loving life.
That's great. You know what I mean? That's winning stuff right there. So that's kind of how I see Amon-Ra St. Brown going forward, especially for this year.
It's a good, very clear vision of what he's going to provide. That kind of receiver, he'll have a couple years where he'll finish. If somebody gets hurt again, high-end wide receiver 2. I mean, because even last year, from weeks 13 to 18, he was the wide receiver 2, number 2 overall, right? He still finished the year as wide receiver 21. And that's not like a short stretch, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 6 weeks. That's more than a third of the season. Right. Well, a little bit more than a third of the season. It took him to be wide receiver 2 overall to finish as wide receiver 21. Even obviously he didn't start the season hot. But bringing a guy like Jameson Williams, having a guy like Deandre Swift, having a top 8 pick at tight end and TJ Hockenson, it will limit his targets where he won't be seeing the 12, 11, 10 targets he saw at the end.
It'll be more 7 and 8, which will lead to that low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 kind of play.
We'll have to see, what kind of red zone production he gets as well. You know what I mean?
For sure.
He's not.
And that benefited him too because he scored a touchdown every single one of those weeks except for week 14. So out of those weeks, he scored 1 touchdown every single week.
There's DJ Chark, 6'4". I mean, obviously, Hawkinson's a bigger player as well, 6'5" or whatever he is. And and Jameson Williams isn't short either. So,
But what will help, though, is I do expect this offense, like I mentioned, the amount of plays I expect to maybe slight uptick in amount of plays run. But I also expect this offense to be more efficient than it was. It was a young offensive line that is expected to be awesome this season. And the division on the whole isn't great right now. So I think good things are ahead for the Lions.
Well, definitely the start of the season for Amon too. So I would be here's how I'm going to treat Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, I love what you guys said about, if he's my wide receiver 3, he's my flex, I'm great. I'm looking for another hot start for Amon. I want him to start where he left off, essentially, right?
And he could without Jameson. It's possible.
Name. Jameson Williams, the doctor's saying, they're saying early October is what they're saying. DJ Shark's coming out that ankle injury, so he might not be 100% the start of the season.
He'll bite you for that.
And it's fine. But, I mean, all of this with the familiarity, because these are all new faces we're talking about, too. Jameson Williams, DJ Shark. There's a chance that Amon could come in and be a solid high-end wide receiver, too, to mid-range wide receiver, because he's a bona fide number 1 receiver early. If that does happen, I would be putting some feelers out there to see if I can upgrade on Amon-Ra St. Brown. To see if I can get...
I'm fine with that.
If I can get a little bit better at that position with another young, solid player, or maybe if I'm a contender somehow because Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably a later pick in your draft, even a proven veteran that's entering their prime at 27, 28, a guy like Mike Williams, for example.
Sure.
I think it might be an easy flip for a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown if he starts off that hot.
Could you maybe sneak and get a Devontae Smith from the Eagles?
Whoa, that's a huge upgrade.
I heard they're only throwing the football to A.J. Brown and nobody else. That's what they're doing at camp, at least. So
We shall see.
I have to see that play out because I get it. A.J. Brown's a beast. I just don't understand how you just can't throw the football to Devontae Smith. I won't believe it until I see it.
Yeah.
I just won't. Because how do you not throw the open guy all the time?
He's open. He's always open.
He's open right now.
Yeah.
He's like 7-11 out there.
Well, St. Brown was top 24 in target hog rate, which is basically a percentage of the team targets that a player accumulates when they're actually like on the field. So he's in there, he's tied with Jamar Chase, Jerry Jeudy, right under Keenan Allen, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin.
But
so
again, those are
some
fake
big
numbers,
names.
though.
What do you mean they're fake numbers?
Because there's nobody else on the field.
No, he's on the field with others. It counts for when he's actually playing.
With other players?
Yeah.
I know, but like what players?
So he hogs the football amongst his teammates when he's actually playing.
I think Rich is saying the teammates were subpar because when he was on the field, everyone else that was really good was injured. So that might have been a little bit slightly inflated.
I mean, so he didn't start going off
That's a
until
good point.
He didn't start going off till week 13. Swift missed weeks 13 through 16. Hockenson missed weeks 14 through 18. So there's literally nobody else really there of substantial talent.
Yeah.
Of note.
It's good context.
That's the whole point. That's why I'm looking for him to get that same hot start because I don't think that will be there. You don't trade up all the way from pick 32 to wherever they got Jameson Williams to not make him your number 1 receiver.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
No, I agree. I think Jameis is destined to be that guy.
DeAndre Swift is too damn talented not to put the ball in his hands. Definitely when you said you want to keep everything kind of short somewhat, well, who are you going to get the ball? Like, who's more electric in the open field on that team? Amon-Ra St. Brown or DeAndre Swift. You're going to put the ball in the playmaker's hands.
For what it's worth, too, the Detroit Lions have the lowest vacated target percentage out of any team in the NFL. So it's funny that they added so many players because all of the players that did catch passes for him last year are all still there. So it does make
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
It was basically Amon-Ra.
And Josh Reynolds.
And Josh Reynolds. And then Swift and Hockenson.
And
so it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate these new assets. Because normally when you have new guys coming in, it's because other players have left. This is not the case at all here. So it'll be really interesting to see how all of those pieces come together.
And Hockenson, we still have not seen the best of him. Right around like flirting with QB 7, 8 overall.
Oh, he's a QB now.
Nice.
Tight end.
So we have Leonard Fournette at tight end, TJ Hockenson at quarterback.
You build your team how you see fit, Garrett. This is my toys. I'll play with them. So, what do you guys look? What do you think of Hockenson in Dynasty? Is he still shiny toy, or you kind of down?
He's fading for me.
It's a little rusty.
Yeah, it is rusty.
I have a feeling everybody's thinking that way, so I kind of want to go out there and buy more Hockenson shares.
I think he's been good. He's never like flashed greatness though. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what you're looking for at the tight end is the differentiators. And we thought maybe he was going to be one of those, and he hasn't yet to this point.
Big year 4.
It is a big year
for Hockenson.
We will see. But they're like we've been talking about this entire time. There's a lot of other weapons on this team at this point. So I'm not sure that year 4 is going to be the year that it's going to all click and all of a sudden he's going to get the share that he needs in order to be like a super effective tight end or a high end tight end. So we'll see. I think Hawkinson's probably going to be this.
I think he's going to live there forever.
8, 9, 10 type of guy.
He's tight end 7 ADP wise right now.
I think that's fair.
That's about right.
That's probably where he'll finish.
I think he'll finish right around there.
Freiermuth or Hawkinson, long term.
Hawkinson.
Goddard, Hawkinson.
Goddard.
Hawkinson.
I'll say Hawkinson just because I think he has a better chance to see more targets.
I think so too.
I mean, George Pickens, and we'll get to the Steelers next show. George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are going to take so much more targets from Freiermuth. Same thing, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. God, it's so damn good.
So good, man.
So, I mean,
So good.
he's so, it's there's only so many targets to go around.
There's a lot of tight ends in the situations right now.
That's what sucks.
That's what
I
makes
mean,
it tough.
for that position, it literally comes down to, are you getting the targets or not? It's that simple.
Yep.
It's for tight end. That's literally. I know it's easy to say for any receiver, but for tight end, there's a very drastic,
Hugely drastic swing. So. Yeah, definitely. You're just either just a guy or you're a difference maker.
All right, want to move on to Packers?
Packers.
Green Bay Packers at quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVP. Jordan Love, Danny Etlin. Running back, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Kylan Hill. Wide receiver, Alan Lazard, Sammy Watkins, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, Samari Torre. Tight end, Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, Josiah DeGuara, and Nate Becker. They signed Sammy Watkins at $1.85 million, only $350,000 guaranteed. They have a very good offensive line. They have a very, very good Hall of Fame quarterback there. Running game should be the probably the prettiest thing on this team, right? Like, you have a really good offensive line. You got Aaron Jones. You got A.J. Dillon.
Right.
Last year was like 60-40 on when they were playing. When it came to rushing, they were even closer on that. I know Aaron Jones had 183 attempts. A.J. Dillon 169. When it came to actual pass catching, I know we've been hearing about, they're getting A.J. Dillon involved in the passing game. They're getting involved in the passing game. I'm not buying that. I'm thinking we're going to see the same thing we saw last year. Aaron Jones had 74 receptions. A.J. Dillon had 30. I bet it's going to be pretty close to the same because Aaron Jones
is a very good pass catcher.
Is a very good route runner, a very good pass catcher. He looked that way coming out of UTEP. It's why I liked him over Jamal Williams coming out that year for Green Bay. I thought he had a higher fantasy football upside because of his ability to do so. He's excelled at the NFL level. But I do think it's like a very good 1A1 situation, right? Kind of almost like the Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt situation.
Sure.
Outside of that tandem, this could be arguably the second best fantasy football tandem you're going to see on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. They're both very, very talented players, and especially, and granted, it could just be a miss. But what I believe it is with A.J. Dillon is A.J. Dillon has gotten significantly better from his time in college compared to what he's doing now. And that some players really do develop a ton once they get to the NFL. That's something it's tough to project that. And like I said, it could just be a miss on my part where I just didn't like him coming out of college and he was better than I realized. But he looks like a guy that's really put in the work, really put in the time. He looks much better at reading the defenses. He looks much more physical than he played in college. So he's a player that's really developed. And if Aaron Jones were to go down, or if A.J. Dillon were to go down, if either one of them goes down,
top three,
the other one instantly, I was going to say top 5, but yes, potentially even top 3.
Yeah, and the one thing that stuck with A.J. Dillon, because we pooped on him a lot coming out of college, was it was always Matt Waldman, right? Because Matt Waldman already came back and said, like everybody else doesn't like A.J. Dillon that much, but his feet are so good for his size. Like, I think he has a potential to get better at the NFL level. That always stuck with me in the back of the head, and guess what?
He was right.
Like most times, Waldman was right because he's looked really good. What do you think about that passing game situation? Because that's where we're talking about who's going to catch all the footballs for Green Bay. Are you worried at all that Dillon will cut into his Aaron Jones targets?
I believe it was today. I can't remember when it was. It was either today or yesterday that I read. Somebody quoted Aaron Rodgers as saying, I don't see why both of those guys can't catch 50 passes. And that's Aaron Rodgers saying it. I know Aaron Rodgers talks a lot, and some of it's true, and some of it never ends up happening. But I think they're going to rely on those guys quite a bit because they are the established guys there. I mean, it's them, it's Allen Lazard, the tight ends. I think have shown in the past to do it, but Tunyon's coming off the injury. And
although we did see video of him the other day moving really well without a brace.
Yes, yeah,
which was good to see.
And DeGuara has looked good in his spot duties as well. He looked good in the preseason game the other day. He's just like a very nice, easy guy, I think, to throw the ball to. But he's like an H-back almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not really a tight end.
He came out that way.
So getting back to your original question, I honestly think both those guys can exist and kind of both be kind of high-end pass-catching type of guys. It probably won't be exactly 50-50, but I don't think Aaron Jones is all of a sudden going to have less because if Aaron Jones gets a bump. I think there's room for both those guys to kind of elevate their game a bit in the passing game.
Because they both excel. There's two things here that they both excel at. You know, Aaron Jones at his pass-catching ability, I saw that he averaged over 2 yards per route or so on PFF when he lined up out like in the slot, which is like the third best. If you look at Aaron Jones' numbers when Devontae Adams was gone as well, I mean,
he averaged 6.7 targets per game when Devontae Adams was out.
I have him here when he was out. He averaged 4.5 catches, so 6 targets makes right, 48.5 yards, and the touchdowns, like they always give you that half touchdown stat there too. So I mean, those are like you're literally talking 10 points per game just in his receiving level, week in, week out. Right. A.J. Dillon run the ball just like a Derrick Henry, a big, powerful guy, hard to bring down. He gained. I saw here I had a PFF stat here too, 2 yards after contact, and 75% of his runs, number one in the NFL last year. So even though we're coming off a back-to-back MVP years for Aaron Rodgers, you think with this offensive line and this running game,
ranked number 5 by PFF,
they're going to have to rely on this pretty heavily, I would imagine. And definitely a guy like Aaron Jones in the pass game. Maybe a situation they get them both on the field, more so lining Aaron Jones up in the slot possibly at times. So I think you might be in a position you can start both running backs.
Interesting note I found when Aaron Jones returned last year, moving forward after week 12, A.J. Dillon received 17 red zone opportunities to just 5 for Aaron Jones. So that's where they differ. Where Aaron Jones might get more targets, A.J. Dillon might get more red zone opportunities and touchdowns.
Which, I mean, it makes sense just by looking at the dude.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quadzilla.
But yeah, I mean, he was big, but in college, that wasn't his thing. Like when we watched his tape, he wasn't like a pile mover, even if he was 250 pounds. So that does show what you were talking about, some growth here in the NFL, that he's getting those looks down there and they're continuing to give him, which means he must be doing what they're looking for.
And then at receiver, you can't ignore how much Aaron Rodgers has been talking up Allen Lazard. I mean, I think today came out and said something again like this guy is our number one. And if Allen Lazard is the number one receiver for Aaron Rodgers, what would you put the odds at him being a wide receiver 1? 52%?
No, I would still have him pretty low. I would probably have it more like 30%, 25%, something like that. It's just tough to take someone that's this far along in their career that has never done it to say, like, now they're suddenly going to do it. I think this will be the first time in a while that we've seen a little bit more of a committee approach as opposed to that one dominant guy. Because Robert Tonyan at tight end is arguably his most reliable
in the red zone, yep.
Player, the guy that he has the most rapport with over his career. So I could see him being heavily involved. Christian Watson, when he gets healthy, they use the draft capital, and then they have Romeo Doubs, who they just keep ranting and raving about. So I would put it more likely as a committee approach than one receiver really dominating like Devontae Adams did.
Yeah, I go back and forth with this because every time Rodgers just talks him up, and I get it. Lazard's who's somebody coming here who's never had over 40 receptions in a year. He's never cleared 550 yards in a season. But Aaron Rodgers is so special.
He is.
And so good that he will put the ball in position for Allen Lazard to succeed.
It's true.
So on this team, a Super Bowl caliber team with a strong run game, getting Bobby Tonyan back with help, having Doubs. We don't even know what Christian Watson's going to do on this team yet because he hasn't been able to practice yet.
Right.
Sammy Watkins, he's whatever, but let's call him a solid number 3 there. I think there's a chance that Lazard can have an 85, 90 catch season for 1,250 yards and 6 tuds.
On the pro Allen Lazard side, which I don't know that I'm strong either way, but on the pro Allen Lazard side, we had last year where Devontae Adams dominated the red zone, 28 targets, 18 receptions, 10 touchdowns. However, Allen Lazard was very sneaky good in the red zone as well. Mm-hmm. We're looking at 8 receptions on 16 targets, which 16 targets is a good amount, especially for a non-wide receiver 1. 7 touchdowns on those targets. So
he had 8 total. 8 total touchdowns.
Right. So 7 of them there. Mm-hmm. So and somebody's got to replace those 28 targets that we saw to Devontae Adams in the red zone. Not that they'll get the exact same amount of red zone attempts as they did before, but someone's got to fill that role. It would likely be him or Robert Tonyan.
Say you give him 25% of that, or you're talking about 22 red zone targets for Allen Lazard.
No, I broke down the Allen Lazard stuff, earlier in July when I had him as a sleeper, and his numbers they're eerily similar to Jordy Nelson's first 3 years in Allen Lazard's last 3 years, because his first year in the league, he was literally in just he had 1 target, 1 reception. He basically didn't play at all in his rookie year. I kind of put that as a redshirt year. And Jordy Nelson and his numbers look almost identical, and year 4 for Jordy Nelson was his year where he had 96 targets, 68 receptions, 1,263 yards, and 15 touchdowns. And that was an opportunity thing for him. And now we're seeing the same exact thing. Allen Lazard is getting his opportunity. Could he blow up and be a wide receiver 1? Yes, absolutely, in this offense attached to Aaron Rodgers. I'm not 100% saying he is, but I think that's within the realm of possibilities for a guy like Allen Lazard.
Yeah, I think, and that's what I was saying when I said 51%, because it's more banking on Aaron Rodgers than I am banking on Allen Lazard. And with Christian Watson's slow start, it'd be hard to see him. I know, honestly, the only thing that would make you worried is Romeo Doubs and how much he's dominating with his size out there.
And if you look at Aaron Rodgers' past, he's always had one guy that was his main target from the wide receiver core, and that has changed over the years. It's gone from Jordy Nelson to
Randall Cobb to
not really, more like right to Devontae Adams. Randall Cobb was like a blip on the radar type of thing.
Hey, there was a couple years. Give him his due.
But and before Jordy Nelson, there were plenty of other guys.
Donald Driver,
right?
And
Yep.
I mean,
Greg
Cobb,
Jennings.
Greg Jennings. Cobb's on the team. He's gonna be 32 any day now. If he didn't already turn 32, and he wasn't utilized. Rodgers won him last year, and they still didn't really use him last year. Speaking of Romeo Doubs, who's been a camp darling nonetheless, talking about the biggest riser amongst Dynasty rookies, what's the most would you give up on Doubs? Or do you think it's more of, hey, Christian Watson just hasn't arrived yet? Or is it the classic, Matt, that we've seen from playing Dynasty for 19 years of, wow, it's always a second player that's drafted.
It's always
at
the
that same
second
position,
wide receiver, isn't it?
That's always the better guy in the long run. More times than not.
Yeah, it's weird.
Well, it's been weird for me because I actually ended up being on the opposite end of this. I drafted him, and then I got offered a 23 second. And I was like, well, I just instantly gained 4 rounds of draft, or not 4 rounds, 2 rounds of draft capital.
Was that recent?
That literally yesterday.
Because, in the trade browser, there's a 23 second for Romeo Doubs in here. I don't know. Maybe that's your team.
It could be. That could be me.
No, there's another one.
What's
that
that?
was from the
Are you a
8th.
contender?
This was a startup.
That seems to be his price in the GM right now.
A 23 second?
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt, would you pay a 23 second for Romeo Doubs?
Oh, man. That's a hard one for me. I'm going to take my loss and just, if I didn't draft him, I'm not going out there and jumping on a second round draft pick for a guy.
Okay.
Personally.
Would you sell him for a 23 second?
100%. Yeah, I'd sell him.
I would just hold him at this point.
If you have him, good job. If not,
if I did,
sorry about you.
If I did, I understand you're jumping a couple of rounds like 23 second, but like, I feel like if I had a 23 second, he was doing what Doubs was doing, I'd be pretty ecstatic about it. Sure. So even though there's a risk that when Watson comes back, this is all like kind of a
mirage.
Kendrick Tompkins, one of those kind of situations. But on a team that needs a receiver pretty badly with a guy who's probably going to play quarterback for this team for the next 2 to 3 years,
right?
I'd rather have that gamble than the second round.
Every once in a while, you get a Miles Austin or a Victor Cruz that the preseason hype actually means something, but not very often.
And even then, like Victor Cruz took 2 preseason hypes.
Yeah.
'Cause the first preseason
It didn't pan out after that one.
It took the second preseason, and then so we were all salsa dancing.
Yep.
And then, like you said, there's Bobby Trees out there, or not Bobby Trees, Bobby Tunyon.
I'm sure he'd be thrilled.
Baby Kittle. He tore his ACL last year in week 8. Garrett said he just saw him running pretty well.
No brace. No brace.
His number one assets, touchdown red zone targets.
Yep.
When he was a high end tight end 2 years ago, is what? Touchdown targets.
He was wide or tight end 3 on the season. So
We said to sell him at that point.
which was right at the time, and now you can buy him still pretty cheap because people are worried about the ACL. I've been able to get him in startups, or even Scott Fishbowl. I got him very late. So.
And if you're a listener to the show, you probably had a lot of Robert Tunyon shares because he was.
Talked about him.
Like
yeah.
we talked about him. We talked him up, and he was on everybody's waiver wire.
Tight end 22 and ADP on Sleeper.
Smash
And the
it.
Dynasty GM, when he went off, he was one of my highest owned player shares because I just picked him up the waiver wire in every league when we were talking about him on the show.
Yeah,
So-
I know, and you beat me to the waiver wire on every single one. Take it. It was like one of those sleepy waiver wire moments for me, and I was
Quick
pissed.
on a trigger.
Yep.
That's for you on all the Justin Jefferson shares I can never get a piece
I'll
of.
take
That's
that.
Speaking
why
of
you
Justin
wore the
Jefferson, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings.
Vacants.
Vacants.
QB Kirk Cousins, Kellen Mond, Sean Mannion, running backs Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler, wide receivers Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, Jalen Naylor, Amir Smith-Marset, BC Johnson, Albert Wilson.
That really is big.
Is it KJ
Just
Osborne?
one whoop for him.
Yeah. Did I say him? Yeah, KJ Osborne is the third person I said.
Oh, okay.
Tight end Irv Smith Jr., Johnny Munt, and
Hey, hey,
Ben Ellefson. They got a new coach as well.
Yeah, coach.
Yeah, they got a new coach.
Kevin O'Connell.
Kevin
Sean
O'Connell.
McVay disciple. He was offensive coordinator past 2 seasons. So maybe he'll spice this up a little bit more throw the football.
I'd imagine it's gonna be a little spicy.
They can use, I mean, they have the weapons to do it. I mean, Adam Thielen's allegedly looking as better. He says he feels better than he has in years, which is everybody says.
Everyone says
But-
it.
It's like the classic like preseason.
Yeah, but the difference here is like the beat reporters are saying that Adam Thielen looks better than he's looked for the last couple of years. So that's also
take
kind
it.
of good.
I'll take it. He was fantastic last season. Was utilized a lot more in the red zone the past 2 years than I expected. I really thought there was going to be a downtick of red zone production from 2020, and he just really continued it on in 2021. He was fantastic in the red zone, making a lot of plays, and it was really sad to see him go down at the end of the year. But it seems like he's made a good recovery, and he's an excellent contender by right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And getting back to the offense, I think they are going to spice it up quite a bit. Did you guys hear that Justin Jefferson interview?
Yeah.
When he was talking about how he didn't understand how Cooper Kupp was getting so wide open. Like, why is this guy open all the time? He's like their number one option, but he's still always so crazy open. And then he's like, and then we started installing this offense, and I get it now. So if Cooper Kupp can get that wide open, I can't wait to see what Justin Jefferson can do in this offense.
Which should bear well for Kirk Cousins. This,
Yep,
for sure.
that Sean McVay offense runs a ton of wide receiver 3 sets, like one that like tops the NFL. So they're going, which is good for KJ Osborne. And we'll talk about Irv Smith Jr. here, where the potential is for him as well. But it's really good for a guy like KJ Osborne if you need some like super deep depth down there, or if a guy like Thielen or Jefferson gets hurt. But for going off of Kirk Cousins, somebody who's came in last year as quarterback 12, 2020 was a low-end quarterback, mid-range 2019. So this bodes really well for Kirk Cousins, who have probably arguably the best weapons he's ever had in his career, from offensive line, the tight end, running back, and receivers as a whole. This might be the best package that Kirk Cousins has ever played with.
I'm not even going to touch that.
That was
dude.
on purpose.
I'm not going to touch that. You looked at me with that grin. I'm not touching it. This is the best group of receivers and wide receivers and tight ends and all that for sure. Packages, I don't know.
Yeah, well, packages they run. So Kirk Cousins, Thielen, Justin Jefferson. I mean, what are we going to say about Justin Jefferson? Nothing.
There's really nothing. He's either your wide receiver 1 or he's your wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. Like, That's the biggest controversy is like, is he 1 or 2? Like that's really all there is to talk about.
There's no sense in fighting over that.
Right.
He's amazing. He's just, let's move on.
Who would you take? Jamar Chase.
So you are going to make us fight over it.
I thought we were just going to move on.
I would take Justin Jefferson. So
I've talked about it a little bit before. I had originally said Justin Jefferson, or I had originally said Jamar Chase because I knew long-term with the quarterback. I like the ascending offense, all of that. However, with everything going on with Kevin O'Connell right now, and it seems like he's really meshed well with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has actually become one of my biggest offseason buys. Mm-hmm. I've bought him all over the place. His ADP was far too low, below guys like Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and Tua, and just it's absurd. But all that being said, I think it's won me over to Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 1.
What have you paid for Kirk Cousins?
I've mostly taken him in the couple startups that I've been in. So I've taken him like where his ADP is after those guys. So I haven't traded for him much. The one time I traded for him, I traded a first straight up for Kirk Cousins, which, depending on where you're at in Superflex, some people, that's a little bit of an overpay. There's other leagues where quarterbacks are just so crazy expensive. It's unreal. So might have been a hair of an overpay, but I was comfortable with it. It was a contending team.
And then for the running game, I mean, Dalvin Cook is in another great position here. There's a lot of rumors that Alexander Madison's not going to get the touches he's been getting over the last couple of years, and that Kevin O'Connell really wants to utilize Dalvin Cook in a 3-down role. Dalvin Cook has shown that he is very viable in the passing game as well when it comes to I think he's been really averaging a little over 4 targets per game. If you're going to utilize that, Dalvin Cook has a high percentage chance to go back to that 2019-2020 role where he's running back 2 overall.
Sure.
Matt, you mentioned before in the show, Ty Chandler is a nice sneaky draft pick, a nice buy, because with Alexander Madison entering free agency here soon, a very clear path for him being the number 2 running back in this class, who also can catch the ball pretty well.
Yeah, no, and he's looked good supposedly in practice as well. So.
Well, and he played great in his game. 5 carries for 50 yards.
Right.
Yeah, and he had over 12 yards on 3 of those carries.
He's a smooth runner.
He was a guy that ranked surprisingly high in our nerd score.
We fast.
Really liked his tape, and he was a guy that really stepped it up over the second half of the season. Especially once he got away from Tennessee, that early time in Tennessee did him no favors. But he went to UNC. Where they've just been churning out running backs lately. They've been getting good running back recruits, and he played there, had a fantastic year, and then he went to the Shrine Bowl and just dominated at the Shrine Bowl, just looked like a monster. So he was a guy that I've really targeted as a late round buy, and it looks like it might be paying off.
Me too. I've scooped him up in a lot of leagues, and he's just like a late round flyer guy. I mean, Dalvin Cook, 27 years old. They can get out of his contract after this year at any point. And obviously Alexander Madison, I think, is a guy that's shown enough that he is going to get an opportunity somewhere else and be gone, especially since Minnesota Vikings only have like around $8 million, in cap space right now. So it's not like they're well off that they can be paying all these running backs. Right. And Dalvin Cook has such a high number. He's 4th on their team against the cap. He's around $12 million, $12 million hit against the cap. So you can't do a high-end running back and sign a high-end backup running back as well. It's just not going to happen. So Ty Chandler is going to be the guy there next year. And who knows? I mean, if he keeps showing out the way he is, maybe he makes Dalvin Cook at some point expendable when his cap number goes up even higher.
Yeah, probably a good chance you see. There's a chance, I wouldn't say good chance. There's a chance Ty Chandler gets a chance at this job for the 2024 season. So it's a good sneaky buy if Dalvin Cook goes down too, because you mentioned just turned 27 years old. This is probably this year and next year peak Dalvin Cook. Mm-hmm. So if you have him and you're not a guaranteed bona fide contender,
definitely
at any point this season, this is a hard sell, Dalvin Cook. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get a 23 first plus for him once the season kicks off with the production you're going to get. So, I mean, Dalvin Cook, you probably get 23 first, 24 second, and maybe even a guy like Ty Chandler on top. I love those trades when you make those kind of moves and end up replacing the guy you traded for.
That's
awesome. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, or Dalvin Cook happens to get injured.
Or if he goes, or he goes down. Now, going back to Irv Smith Jr., I know Matt's a massive fan of Irv Smith Jr., still only 23 years old, so still super young. And we mentioned this Rams offense. They want to run a ton of wide receiver 3 sets, but This offense also ran by Kevin O'Connell, where they used a tight end frequently. Like Tyler Higbee was on there. He was playing 75% of the snaps. So the odds of having all three receivers and having Irv Smith on the field are going to be pretty high. This is a situation where I saw Tyler Higbee last year. He was playing in like multiple different games where he was on the field for 90% of the snaps. So, because I was trying to see how Irv Smith fell in this role. Like, if KJ Osborne was out and Irv Smith was in, or was Irv Smith out because of KJ Osborne? And what it shows is that they both have a role in this offense.
And that's good stuff right there, because I would have thought it would have gone the other way. I would have thought they would just get their top three guys on no matter what. And obviously that's Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Irv Smith. But it sounds like there's even room for whomever that third wide receiver ends up being. KJ Osborne, Amir Smith-Marset, if he ever materializes in anything. But I mean, Irv obviously slated for a big role last year, never came to fruition. We'll see what he does this year.
Yeah, the injury killed him.
Yeah, the injury, it really killed him. Was it a meniscus that?
I believe so. He was out the entire year.
He was out the entire year, yeah.
But Conklin, they let Conklin go.
They
so
did.
he's gone now. He has no competition there whatsoever.
Which was interesting because Tyler Conklin we were talking about how important either targets or touchdowns are for the tight end position. Tyler Conklin actually was the 8th most targeted tight end in the red zone in all of the NFL last year. So if that is true about the position in Kirk Cousins, we're looking at a guy being targeted pretty heavily in the end zone for a guy like Irv Smith. So that could be good news for him.
Good speed for Smith too. I know he's only like 6'2", but ran a 4.63. Interesting because the Vikings do have, outside of Justin Jefferson, some good sneaky buys in Ty Chandler, Irv Smith Jr., Kirk Cousins for Superflex leagues here. KJ Osborne, if somehow Adam Thielen went down. Adam Thielen's a contender buy for sure because all that guy does is score touchdowns year in, year out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Minnesota Vikings offense is like the exact opposite of the Chicago Bears for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
a lot of guys I'm interested in.
Yeah, a lot of people, just because it's an exciting offense. It's Sean McVay style offense. But even outside of that, last year they were still good for fantasy production and interesting as well. So this just makes them more interesting now that they don't have a defensive-minded head coach.
When you look at touchdown receivers, touchdown leaders over the last 2 years for receiving touchdowns, number 3, Adam Thielen.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, he's tied with Tyreek Hill, 24 touchdowns. So, interesting.
Yeah.
You guys want to talk about the AFC North?
I do.
Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Jump into that nerd herd. Right now, got the nerd herd. Do we have a promo code, Jared?
Yeah. Football.
Football, get some.
Couldn't make it easier.
Yeah, get the nerd herd.
What did we talk about?
We were just at the expo showing all the people there what the GM 2.0 is going to look like.
Yeah, we are.
Pretty dope. You want a piece of an action? You want to get ready to dominate your season? Nerd herd. Jump in there.
Moving the GM to an app.
Ooh.
Yep.
On your phone.
Everything's be on everything. We're going to move everything to
the mock draft app. So most
app.
of you probably should have it.
Nerd herd, 15% off all our stuff. You get to play around the film room, the nerd score. Rankings are already on there. And, of course, the Dynasty GM tool, the number 1 Dynasty tool on the market today. Gives you a league analyst and
an extra podcast. You can hear the AFC North.
Extra podcast, player cards, all sorts of fun stuff.
Ooh, yeah, those player cards look
so
sweet.
fun.
See you next week with a show not breaking down divisions.
Adios.